Good morning, kids. It's me, Mr. Mike. I'm here for another Sunday school virtual time with you. Of course, we have my felt board because we all know I'm obsessed with it, and we are excited to bring another story to you today. Now, last week we talked about the twins. We talked about Jacob and Esau, and how one was favored by the mom, one was favored by the dad. But God had a plan. That story was a little bit tough because it seemed like people were doing the wrong thing. They were tricking. Jacob was tricking his father. Rebecca was being a little bit shady, trying to get her son to steal his older brother's blessing for the family and his birthright. So it was a little bit. It wasn't the greatest family story or the greatest story of doing the right thing. But sometimes God can use sin and people doing the wrong thing and turn it around for his glory, for his good and his plan. And so God actually had a plan for Jacob. And so we're going to learn that today, how he took this story of a man and his mom who tricked his dying father to steal his older brother's birthright, and how he used those broken people to make a plan for for the future of God's people. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going back into talking about Jacob, okay? And we're going to go into that in just a minute. But I want to welcome you guys. It's good to be with you again. You guys did a great job last week listening to the story of Jacob and Esau, and I know you will do just as well today. But before we learn something new, let's go back and review what we've already learned. So we're going to talk about a little bit of a review of everything that we've been talking about these past few weeks with all your different teachers here on the virtual Sunday school. So it's important to review what we've already learned so we remember that all of the Bible fits together as one story. We learned that God created everything for his glory. We've been talking about that week after week. And then later, he saw that all the people of the world were sinful. So first he created it. We showed the Garden of Eden. We showed the creation of the world, and then we showed the creation of people, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And he did all that. And then as sin started to enter the world after Eve and Adam ate the apple from the tree, sin came in, and then a lot of bad things started happening with Cain and Abel, and the world just got more and more sinful. So he decided that he had to send a flood to destroy all the earth. Remember, we talked about the flood and how he used Noah to save the people and his family and the Christians. And he also saved at least 2 of each animal. We talked about that. Noah's family had many children, so that the earth was soon filled with people again. And God told people to spread out, but they didn't listen. God confused their languages. Remember the Tower of Babel and how he got them all speaking different languages so they couldn't work together to build this tower to heaven to glorify themselves. They were forgetting to glorify God. So we talked about that. And he gave them all different languages, and they would have to spread out and live among the people who they could understand. Then God promised to bless all the world through Abraham. So we remember the other teachers talking about Abraham. Abraham was Isaac's father, and Isaac was Jacob's father. And God showed his faithfulness to the promise he made for each of these people, and promised that he would continue to be faithful throughout time. Now last week, so these are all generations, fathers and grandfathers and grandsons. So last week we learned about Jacob and how he stole Esau's blessing. And yet, even though Jacob sinned, God still kept his promise that he had made to Abraham and would one day send Jesus through Jacob's family. So this is all leading up to the birth of Jesus, right? So God had this plan. So even though Jacob is broken and made a mistake and was sinful, and Rebecca was sinful, God used that brokenness to continue his plan. And so his plan is partly to have Jacob, lead the people into the next phase that will lead to Jesus coming and being born. There's a really, really, really cool story about Jacob, and we're going to talk more about Jacob today, and of course using our felt board. But first I want to do a little activity. I have it here. So let's think about our names, okay? What does your name mean? Have you ever asked your parents what your name means? My name is Michael. Most people call me Mike. You guys call me Mr. Mike usually, or Mr. Beech. And my name means one who is like God. Now that's a lot of pressure. I remember when I first learned what my name meant, I'm like, what? What? How? That one who is like God? Because I am nowhere near that good, and perfect, obviously, and we're all sinners, and so I realized as I got older that it kind of more it was kind of based on the archangel Michael, and Michael was a creation of God, and a very important angel, and a very good angel, a righteous angel, and it still is. Michael's still up there fighting the good fight, and so the name Moore means one who God created, one who wants to do good things like God, and God is his kind of his mentor and his the person he looks towards to want to be like. So it's more about that and not being like God. It's just wanting to be a good person and do the right thing. So that's what Michael means. So did you ever ask your parents what your name means? It'd be a really cool time to maybe stop for a minute if your parents are there and say, hey, Mom and Dad, what does my name mean? Or if you're grandma's there, whoever's there with you, maybe ask them. You can also look it up on the internet, or there's some books about names. So I would just encourage you to take some time and think about what your name means, because we're going to talk about that today in our story, because Jacob's name gets changed. Do you know what it was changed to? All right, if you know, just don't say it out loud. You got to wait, and see if we can hear it in the story. So what Jacob's name meant, okay, when they changed it, we're going to talk about that. So let's tell the story, and then we will talk about what Jacob's name was changed to and what that name meant and why God changed it to that. But first of all, a little game. We're going to play a little game. All right, so we're talking about names. So I want you to think of a word that you could add to your name that would help people remember your name, okay? But it has to start with the same letter. So my name, being Michael or Mike, starts with an M. So if I wanted to think about a name or a word that start with that same letter that would make people help remember me, and associate me with something, I'd probably pick music, because I like to sing, and I love music. And so I think that it'd be Music Mike. Okay, so that'd be a good way to remember my name. So think about your name. What's it start with? And then maybe a word that is something that would associate people with you. So if you love art, or if you love sports, or if you love music, or if you love animals, and there's something that starts with the same letter. So think about that. Play that game. If someone's there with you, you guys can each think of one and tell each other what name you came up with. All right, so have fun with that. Just something to do while we go into our story. All right, so let's get into that. Let's talk about our story today. And this one is called Jacob's New Name. And this is found in Genesis 32 through 33. Okay, so God made a covenant with Jacob's grandfather. Do you remember who he was? Abraham, right? So it was Abraham, and then Isaac, and then he had the two twins with Rebekah. So he made a covenant, God did. And then God told his promise to Jacob's father, Isaac, which we talked about last week, who Isaac was really sick. He was going blind. He was kind of on death's door. He was about ready to go meet God in heaven. And he got tricked. He got tricked by Rebekah and by his youngest son, and fell for it with all the, they put the goat's fur on Jacob's arm and tricked their dad into thinking that he was his hairier brother, Esau. Really strange story, but a cool one. And God's going to use that now. So God had a plan for Jacob. Even though Jacob was a younger brother and he did the wrong thing, God wanted Jacob to receive the blessing for his family, because it was part of a plan. So God was going to use these broken people and these mistakes to make his plan unfold. So years before, Jacob tricked his father and his brother, and he stole the blessing from Esau. So here's Jacob. Remember Jacob. There he is. And years before, he had tricked his twin brother, Esau, and he stole his birthright and his blessing. Then Jacob ran away to escape Esau's anger, because of course Esau was very, very angry. So Jacob ran away. Now while he was gone, God met with Jacob and promised to be with him. So even though Jacob did the wrong thing, and we all sin, we all make mistakes, God didn't give up on him. He still stayed with him. He was still part of his life. Jacob was a believer, just like his father and mother and his brother. And so God was going to use this broken man, and he was going to do good things. So he stayed with him, he stuck with him. He didn't give up on him, even when he made mistakes. He said, you know what? I know you're a sinner. We all make mistakes. I still love you, and we're going to do something good with this. So 20 years went by. 20 years. He ran from his family, ran from his brother. His dad was already gone at this point, but he ran away from the mom that he loved. He had to stay with his uncle, and he ran away from his brother because his brother was super angry, and he was afraid that he was going to really hurt him, maybe kill him. So finally, after 20 years, God told Jacob that it was time for him to go home. So Jacob began the trip with his family. Here's Jacob. He has a family now. And what did God promise Abraham and Isaac? He promised that there'd be lots and lots of family, lots of kids. That their name was going to go on and on and on and on. So, this is all his family here. All right, so after 20 years, a lot has happened. Jacob has gotten married. He has a bunch of kids. There's cousins and aunts and uncles, and just a big family. A lot of blessings in this family. And God had promised that to Abraham and Isaac, that their family would multiply and be numerous. So he began the trip home with his family and all of his possessions. So he's taking everything with him. They're kind of packing up the camels, packing up the donkeys. He was blessed, so he had a lot of things. He had a lot of animals, a lot of the livestock and possessions. So he's packing all of this up to travel back home to see his brother, who he wronged 20 years ago. But going home meant that Jacob would see his brother Esau again. And Jacob was afraid that Esau would still be angry with him for stealing his blessing and birthright. So Jacob sent a messenger. So before he goes, he brings a messenger. And he says, hey, can you go and check things out and see if my brother is still really, really, really angry at me and might want to kill me? And then come back and let me know before I bring my whole family and all my stuff. And I don't want to get hurt, and maybe we should figure out, the situation back home. So he sends a messenger. There goes the messenger. He's waiting with his family to get word back of how Esau is. So he sent the messenger to tell Esau that he was coming. When the messenger came back, so he went and talked to Esau. The messenger comes back, and he says that he told Jacob that Esau was coming to meet Jacob. Good news. Hey, Esau's actually on his way here. So he maybe heard that you were coming back, and he wants to come see you, come meet you. But he's also bringing 400 men with him. A little scary. Why would he bring 400 men to meet his brother? So this kind of freaked Jacob out. Jacob was very afraid because God had promised that his family would be numerous as the stars. And that was already starting. He already had a pretty big family. But how could that happen if Esau was going to kill them all? Because if he'd bring 400 men, it sounds like he's ready for a war. He's not just there to kill Jacob. It sounds like he might want to kill everyone, his whole family. Jacob made a plan. He divided his family into two groups. So here's his family. He divides them into two groups. And the reason he did this, because he figured if Esau attacked one group, then maybe the other group could escape. So it's a very interesting plan. I mean, I guess when you have that many kids and, family, that you could be like, well, I won't lose all of them, and I want to keep the name going. The name has to keep going because it's part of God's plan. So if I split my family, some of them can hide and escape, and then maybe he'll only kill the other half. So this is a tough situation, and obviously we need God in this moment. We need God to be in control. So we'll see what God does with this. All right. So that's his plan, to split the family, and maybe the other group could escape. Then Jacob asked God to keep his promise, and then Jacob prayed. And what he prayed was, please rescue me from my brother Esau. Because God knows what happened 20 years ago. God has been with Jacob this whole time. And he's also been with Esau and working on his heart. And, helping them both figure out who they need to be as men of God and part of God's plan. So he prays this, please rescue me from my brother Esau. So Jacob had an idea. So first he splits his family. Okay, so we'll put them over here for now. Then he decides that he is going to send a really nice gift to his brother. So, if you steal someone's birthright and their blessing 20 years ago and just kind of leave them and run away and then enjoy all the riches and all the great things that you got from the blessing, maybe it's a good idea to send a gift so your brother who is bringing these 400 men doesn't kill you. So he decides to send him a large gift. So he sends him goats. He sends him cows, sheep, donkeys, camels. We'll put them back here because they're a little farther away because they're smaller. And bulls. So that is quite a gift, right? Now this was a good gift back then. I don't know if you'd be happy if you got all this. I think it'd be kind of cool, but I wouldn't know where to put them. I live right in town, so I don't know what I would do with all of these animals. But back then, this was a great gift. It meant a lot of money. It meant livestock for your family to eat and to work on their farm. They could use the bulls to work. They could use the cows for milk, the donkeys to carry things and to haul things and to pull things. Of course, the camels for traveling and also hauling things. The sheep for clothes, to make clothes and warm blankets and things like that. So each of these animals were valuable. They brought good things to the family if they had them. So he sends him all these animals to try to make Esau happy. And maybe then Esau would forgive him. So that night, after he sent all these animals, all right, that night, there's a stream here, okay, that was dividing the land that they were at, and that Esau's bringing these 400 men to come see him, and there was a river there, and a stream they call it. So Jacob moved his family across the stream. So remember, he divided them, so he put like half the family on one side of the stream, and then half the family was back there with him. So he sends them across the stream, and they might be safe. But Jacob stayed behind. So some of his family stayed with him. Some of his family went across the stream. And nighttime came. So now it is night. Put a little moon there for night. So Jacob stayed behind, and a man appeared. So this man appeared out of nowhere. And the man was actually God himself. So God said, I'm going to stay with you, I'm going to protect you, I'm going to guide you, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to be there for you and help you through this tough time as you try to make things right with your brother. And so he appears as an actual man because God can do anything, right? So we know that God's not a man on earth. That was Jesus. His son came as a man on earth. But God could do anything, so he could form himself as a man. And he appeared to Jacob on this night before his brother was going to come with his 400 men. And the man wrestled with Jacob all night. Okay, so that was a big thing back then. I don't know if some of you guys wrestle. You might wrestle with your brothers and sisters, wrestle with your friends. Wrestling was a big thing, all right? It was a way to show dominance, a way, some of it was for sport, some of it was for play, some of it was just to show who the stronger man was, and kind of a rite of passage kind of thing where, like, you know, you wrestle the weaker person, you're the stronger person, you have proven yourself as the stronger man. So here is God in human form, and he decides to wrestle Jacob. And they wrestle all night. Okay, this is quite the battle, all right? They weren't really wrestling for fun. They were wrestling for dominance. They were wrestling to be the victor. So both of them were giving their all. And they wrestled all night. And Jacob refused to give up. And the man actually injured Jacob's hip. So they were wrestling so hard, and Jacob was fighting back. Because it was probably, do you think God was strong? 100%. God presented himself as a strong man, all right? And they were wrestling so hard, and Jacob wanted to win so bad and fight for his family that he ended up hurting his hip, all right? So now he's got a bum hip. He says, let me go. The sun is coming up. So the next day, the morning's coming, the moon is going away, the sun's coming up. And the man says, who is actually God, he says, let me go, the sun is coming up. So we got to stop wrestling. This is getting ridiculous. You hurt your hip, and we're still wrestling. You're still fighting me with all you got. But Jacob would not let him go. I will not let you go unless you bless me, he said. And then finally, the man, who is God, remember, said, okay, you will no longer be Jacob. So we talked about this new name that Jacob was going to get. Your name will be Israel, because you wrestled with God and men, and you have won. We'll talk a little bit later about what Israel means. The man blessed Jacob, and the sun came up, and Jacob limped because he hurt his hip. So here comes the sun. Here's Jacob limping away from his night of wrestling with God. All right, let's see, I lost my place. Okay, so Jacob limped because of his hip. Now Jacob looked and saw Esau and his 400 men coming to meet him. All right, so it's the next day. Here comes Esau and 400 men. Now, I don't have enough felts to put 400 men here, but I do have enough to give you the idea. All right, so looks a little outnumbered, doesn't he? All right, so here is Jacob after fighting all night with God, wrestling with him, giving it his all so that he can maintain his life, maintain his blessing, and get enough strength and courage to face his brother and keep his blessing. So here comes Esau with all these men. So he goes to meet him, and Jacob went to meet Esau. He bowed down 7 times to show respect to his brother. So 7 times. So bowing, 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 bowing. So he was really humbling himself. He was really showing Esau, hey, I sent you that gift. I do love you, brother. I'm sorry for what I did 20 years ago. And I know you're my older brother. You needed my respect. You deserve my respect. And he's bowing, 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 showing him that he is sorry. Esau ran to Jacob. Okay, so what do you think Esau did? So he got these gifts. He brought his 400 men. And his brother humbles himself right away after wrestling all night with God. and bows to his brother. So Esau runs to him, and you know what he does? He hugs him. So he gives his brother a hug. It's hard to get these, make them look like they're hugging, but they're hugging, okay? He gives him a hug. And he wasn't angry anymore. So God had softened his heart over these 20 years. And in that moment. And he decided to forgive his brother for what he had done. So they hugged and they cried. The two brothers cried together because there's just all those years of feeling bad and having regrets and being angry and being sorry finally released, and they were able to love each other again and cry about that. And he asked his brother, so Esau asked Jacob, "Why did you send so many animals ahead of you?" And Jacob said, "I wanted to make you happy." Now Esau was being pretty humble himself in this moment, and he says, "I have enough. God took care of him. God had blessed him in his own way. God had his back, even though he didn't get his birthright and he was robbed of his birthright and his blessing. God still took care of him. He still made sure that he was provided for and loved, while he was also protecting Jacob. So God is good, and God took a bad situation and turned it into something good and used it for his good plan. So Jacob says to Esau, "Please take my present. God has given me more than I deserve." So Jacob knew that he had been more than blessed, even when he had done the wrong thing. And that God still loved him and still provided for him. So he said, "Please, please, please take that gift. I want you to have it." So Esau agreed to take the gifts, and he returned to his home. And then Jacob and his family finally traveled on to Shechem. All right. So here goes the 400 men back with the gifts. And Jacob goes back, and he goes back and takes his family. Everybody survived. Everybody's okay. He brought his family back together again. And he goes back to, it's Shechem, I believe. Shechem, I said that. I didn't pronounce that right. And he bought land for them to live on. So remember, he had some money. So he bought this new land. Oops, I have that upside down. Very beautiful land for his family to live on. So here's his family, all back together again. He was finally home in the land that God had promised him. So, everything kind of came full circle. He now had this beautiful land that he could provide for his family, back closer to his home, to be back with his mom and his brother. And the plan unfolded just as God had created it to be. So it's a really, really awesome story. I like this story of how God used a broken family and a bad decision and sin and turned it into something good that was going to help the people. All right, so I have a few questions for you, like we always do at the end. Did you guys come up with your name game? Did you figure out a name or a word that you could put with your names to help people remember your name and what, something about you that they would always associate with you? If you did, and you see me next time, let me know what your new name is. And I'll be like, "Hey, I'm Mr. Music Mike." And you could say, "Hi, I'm, fill in the blank." All right. So before I ask questions, I want to tell you what Israel means, okay? Because that is the new name that Jacob got. So God changed Jacob's name to Israel. Now it's a combination of the Hebrew words for wrestle and God. How cool was that? So he wrestled God all night, and then God gave him the name Israel because he's like, "Hey, you had to wrestle God. You had to win that battle and prove yourself." And he also had to wrestle man. He had to wrestle his own guilty feelings about what he had done to his brother. He had to wrestle his brother figuratively, had to deal with what he had done to his brother. And the possibility of him being very angry with him still and fighting him. And of course, we know that that didn't happen. God took care of that and softened their hearts. So it means wrestle in God. This name shows what God's people would continue to do. They would wrestle with following God and choose to go on their own way and turn back to him over and over and over again. So this is a pattern that's going to continue with his ancestors, not his ancestors, his the generations to come of his kids and their kids and their kids. They're going to continue to wrestle with God, trying to do the right thing. Sometimes they'll make mistakes. Sometimes they'll do the right thing, and it will keep coming back to God. We kind of all do that. That's part of being human. All right. This name also showed that God was confirming his covenant with Jacob because it described the way that God's people would be close to God even when they wrestled with him. So even when we don't do the right thing, God still loves us. He doesn't abandon us. He does not leave us. So that's a really cool thing to know what a name means. And I encourage you to figure out what your name means and talk to people about that. So we're going to end with a few questions. I always like to quiz you and make sure that you were paying attention. All right. So question number 1. Why was Jacob afraid to go home? Do you remember? He was afraid Esau was going to kick his butt. Pretty much. All right, he was afraid that Esau would still be angry and want to hurt him. Number 2, what happened when Jacob's name was changed? Think about what his name meant. What was happening when his name changed? What was going on that night? Him and God were wrestling, right? God came down in a form of a man and wrestled with him. And that's when he decided to get his name changed. Number 3, what was Jacob's new name and why was the name so important? So the name was Israel. I don't know if you guys knew that before we even started. I asked that question at the very beginning of our session here. And, some of you might have remembered that from Bible stories that you've heard before, that his name was Israel. It was important because it's the name of God's covenant people, okay? And the name meant that he wrestled with God and that it was going to be a covenant for all his people and his generations to come. Number 4. How did Esau respond when Jacob came home? He was kind of nervous, has 400 men. I'm not really sure why he brought the 400 men. It never really made that clear. Probably in the Bible story, if we read it, maybe there will be a little more detail if you read it right from the Bible. That's what I love about the Bible because it always has a lot more detail in it. So it's a good thing to go back and read this story with your family. The Bible passage is Genesis 32 and 33, 32 through 33. And the key passage is from Genesis 26:24. So maybe go back and check that out and see if there's a little more detail about maybe he did bring the 400 men to help fight and then realized when he got there that he didn't have to, that he could forgive his brother. And number 5, what can stop God's plan? Now we talked about this last week, the week before, so you guys should know this answer. What can stop God's plan? Nothing. Nothing can stop God's perfect plan. So another great story, guys. I'm enjoying sharing these stories with you every week. I know me and the other teachers are happy that we can provide this for you. We look forward to being back in person here pretty soon. The weather is changing and beautiful weather is coming, and so I think good things are coming as well. So it was great spending time with you. If you see me next time, let me know what your new name is, and I will talk to you then. Let's end in a prayer, and everybody have a good week. All right, let's pray. Dear God, I thank you for the story of Jacob, who was renamed Israel for his people. I thank you that God loves us so much that even when we sin and make mistakes, he never leaves us, he never abandons us, he stays with us and sees us through to his perfect plan. I thank you for your love. I thank you for a beautiful day that we're enjoying today. It's in the 60s temperature-wise, so at least it's like that today. I hope it's like that by Sunday when you see this, and we can get outside and enjoy your beautiful creation, Lord. I thank you for your love, and I thank you for your guidance through this time. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, you have a great week. I miss you. I love you, and I will see you soon. Bye.